Markarth and the Reach are our lands. That is why we are the Forsworn. We cannot claim the home that is rightly ours. But then, during their war with the elves, we had our moment. We drove the Nords out of the Reach in a great uprising. Then Ulfric and his men came. Those of us who didn't run were executed, except for myself, my king, and a handful of others.
Markarth's problems drag far and wide into the depths of the Reach. Every player, new or old, encounters the horrific assassination of a bystander in the market of Markarth. This incident introduces the city and its dilemmas directly to you, either alienating you from the city entirely, or piquing your curiosity in a bid to investigate the meaning behind the patriotic chant of the now dead assassin. The Forsworn, or rather former Reachmen, are a faction of men that formerly inhabited most of the Reach, and their presence in the Reach stretches far into the past of Tamrielic history. They've made numerous attempts at regaining and defending their former lands and territories, whether that be from the Empire or Nords of Skyrim. And this discussion loosely centers itself around the sheer will and determination that the Reachmen display. Cidhna Mine, although one of the most fearsome prisons in Skyrim, is a pillar of hope for the Reachmen, and it represents the lengths these betrayed people will go to rebuild their kingdom. Hey there everyone, this is Xith, back from his hiatus, and today we'll be showcasing the realities of Cidhna Mine and how it can kickstart yet another revolution at the hands of the Forsworn. We're first introduced to the Forsworn conspiracy during our investigation into the assassination of a woman in the marketplace of Markarth. Since we witnessed his assassination personally, we can recount that the assassin is presumably a Forsworn soldier, and the person that was assassinated is named Margaret, a person we later come to know as an Imperial spy. Her task in Markarth was to investigate the Silverbloods and their affairs as the wealthiest family in town. The extent to which this investigation went is unbeknownst to me, but she might have unraveled something malicious, and this gives us plausible cause to the fact that the Forsworn are maybe connected or even employed by the Silverblood family to do their violent bidding. Cidhna Mine is located by the waterfront of Markarth, and when entering, one is perplexed at the fact that Markarth's city guards don't take care of general security there, but that Silverblood mercenaries do. All of these changes further bring us to conclude that the Silverblood family heavily controls the judicial system and economy of Markarth, serving as the main distributors of silver in the region. The Jarl relies on the Silverbloods to operate Cidhna Mine, making their presence in Markarth and the Reach omnipotent. All of this display of power logically leads to corruption, and the city guard is almost entirely obedient to the wishes of the Silverblood family. Now, as complex as this whole storyline is, I'd like to focus more on the mine itself and what it ultimately represents.
Some of us refused to bow. We knew the old ways would lead us back to having a kingdom of our own. That is who we are, the Forsworn, criminals in our own lands, and we will cut a bloody hole into the Reach until we are free.
The mine itself, as I mentioned beforehand, is controlled by mercenaries, and the prison itself consists mainly of Forsworn members and their king in rags, Madanak. Roughly 20 years prior, Ulfric Stormcloak and his newly formed militia stormed Markarth in a ruthless endeavor to retake the Reach from the Reachmen, with the king being Madanak at the time. Once the city was reclaimed by Ulfric, a fair few Reachmen nobles were spared, with the others being ruthlessly executed, but the useful few who were spared were ordered to serve their new masters. Madanak and Nepos the Nose were such people, being forced to carry out the will of Thonar Silverblood, who so valiantly quote-unquote saved them. Madanak's fate led him to the cold caverns of Cidhna Mine, making a deal with Thonar to operate his rebellion directly from Cidhna Mine. Both parties benefited from such a deal. Thonar had disposable agents that could be pinned as mere Forsworn lunatics, which never links back to him, and Madanak was still allowed to somewhat rule over the Forsworn from the confines of Cidhna Mine.
He stokes the passions of the downtrodden in this city, directs them to kill the enemies of the Forsworn in our name.
Although most of the prisoners are members of the Forsworn, there are a couple of people that are genuinely innocent and have been wrongfully imprisoned due to the widespread paranoia surrounding this matter. Odvan, a Breton prisoner, is the result of such wrongful convictions, and in just minutes his entire life was uprooted, being imprisoned for the death of a person whose name he doesn't even know.
Guards say I murdered someone. I was just sleeping off some meat in my aunt's house. That didn't stop them from arresting me. I didn't even know who they said I killed.
Not shortly after his wrongful imprisonment, he joined the Forsworn in order not to submit to the harsh conditions of Sidna Mine. Another dreadful story Sidna Mine offers us is the history of Braig, who was a supposed Forsworn informant before his imprisonment. After talking to him, we're told how his daughter was mercilessly beheaded in front of him for his involvement with Madanak. All too valiant was his daughter, but the world harbored a far more sinister fate for her. Braig accepted his fate and continued to serve Madanak as to finally free his daughter's soul from an unjustified death.
But my little Aethra didn't want to see her papa leave her. She pleaded to the Jarl to take her instead. And after they made me watch as her head rolled off the block, they threw me in here anyway to dig up their silver.
The main person that introduces us to the rules of the mine is Urakin, who harbors a story similar to Odvan. Knowing that Urakin would get framed for the death of a nobleman, he tried fleeing Markarth, slaughtering guards who were in his way but succumbing to their numbers eventually.
A Nord nobleman I served was stabbed in the night. Wasn't me, but I knew I'd be blamed. So I ran, joined the Forsworn, started killing, got caught. Now I'm here.
I'm not Madanak. I was never a leader of the Forsworn. The only anger I can justify is my own. But every family in the Reach has a story like mine. There are no innocent onlookers in this struggle, just the guilty and the dead.
Sidna Mine uses the passionate hate of its prisoners to rebirth people. It gives them reason to fight, which inadvertently breeds hope. Conversion stories like these are a recurring theme inside the mine. People are obligated to become survivors, which helps them find purpose in what the Forsworn preach. Madanak himself uses the unjustified imprisonment of these people to further the strength of his rebellion. For there are no better fighters than determined ones who realistically have nothing to lose.
I've been playing this game for almost 20 years, sending the young to their deaths, all in the name of the Forsworn. And I'm tired. So tired.
And to be honest, I don't blame these men for finding purpose in the face of desolation. They've been stripped of their basic humanity, whilst left to rot serving one of the wealthiest families in Skyrim. All they know is spite. It drives them to collect that last vein of ore for the day, knowing that sometime soon they could breathe fresh air again. These prisoners might not have been fully innocent in the eyes of the law, but after the Markarth incident occurred in which Ulfric Stormcloak murdered most of the Reachmen, the Forsworn took it upon themselves to terrorize the Nordic population of the Reach, cultivating fear and a general paranoia for peasants and merchants trying to earn a living. This type of fear reached the Jarl himself, and I assume he had to appease the people of Markarth, even if that meant wrongful imprisonment.
When their uprising was crushed, I had Madanak brought to me. He was a wild animal, but a useful one. I offered him a stay from execution if he used his influence to deal with any annoyances that came up. Competitors, agents, idiots. So I've let him run his little Forsworn rebellion from inside Sidna Mine. Now he's out of control.
Unlike the Jarl, the Silverbloods use this new sense of fear to generate even more wealth, having the prisoners mine and having Madanak order the killing of any possible competitors in the Reach via his soldiers outside. The Jarl was hesitant but complacent with the deal that Thonar had made, so as long as Thonar kept Madanak on a tight leash. Using the mine to enact his cunning acts of manipulation upon Thonar Silverblood, Madanak lured Thonar Silverblood into a sense of complacency, which allowed him to easily strike back and overcome his oppressor. Only after Madanak's spy kills his own wife, Thonar realizes the disadvantaged Sidna Mine put him in, a place where the mighty will of the Forsworn was left to fester and brood, and depending on the actions of the last Dragonborn, the fate of Thonar can indeed be bloody. If Thonar is killed and Madanak successfully exerts his display of power upon Markarth, then one could say that the mine both served and harmed the people of Markarth, changing the history of Markarth for years to come. Such a source of wealth was also the direct harbinger of death and rebellion, which is really fitting. The Reachmen seem to believe they haven't yet lost the war, whilst the Nords believe it long over, treating the Forsworn rebellion as a nuisance, yet that is exactly what the Reachmen exploit, a false sense of security. Sidna Mine represents more than just a means to an end. It showed the Jarl and Nordic noblemen of Markarth that such loose ends should never be left to mingle and recuperate. But most importantly, it showed us the vehement ambition of the Reachmen to reconquer what once was. Their will to hold on to what once was seems unbreakable. We want to believe that one side out of the two holds at least some moral superiority, yet the actions of both sides is the reason for this seemingly never-ending conflict. No matter how badly you exterminate a colony of wasps, if the queen still draws breath, you'll witness the creation of an even stronger colony. No one truly escapes Sidna Mine, but not because it's impossible to, but because a piece of your sanity will always linger in the confines of that mine.
Why? We had a deal, Madanak. A deal!